Welcome to another tier list, another tier maker video. I'm not streaming this one live, unlike the past couple. I am just recording this one. I don't know if that'll make it better or worse. We'll find out. You can tell me in the comments. But I wanted to get one done for this week because we didn't have one last week, and I settled on one that I found. Although I edited the tier system a little bit, but this is one that I found on TierMaker. It is ranking or tiering, I should say, the final girls of horror movies. So that's what we're going to do. I think I looked through these and I do know them all. Like, I couldn't tell you all of their names because, like, remembering character names isn't, like that easy. But I've seen all the movies. I know what movies they're all from. I remember their characters by and large. I think there's one that I'm a little fuzzy on because I've only seen the movie once and it was a long time ago. But other than that, like, I can do all these. So we're going to dive in. We'll see where they land. And the hardest thing about doing these tier makers is the first one, like placing your first, unless there's one that sticks out, is that I know that's the best one. I know that's my favorite, and that's where I'm going to put her. Her in this case, because we're doing Final Girls. Then maybe I can sort of like, okay, if I establish that's the S tier, then I'm, going down and from there, and I can sort of like, it can take shape, and I can realize what a B feels like, what a C feels like, what A feels like, yada yada yada. But do I have an obvious favorite? I think that what your mind probably jumps to is Jamie Lee Curtis, right? You think, Halloween, because it's my favorite horror movie. It is the quintessential slasher movie. She's maybe the most famous final girl in all of horror, but that doesn't actually mean necessarily that she's my favorite final girl. Halloween's my favorite horror movie. It's my favorite slasher movie. But is Laurie Strode my favorite final girl? Also, the old Laurie Strode's down there from the modern Halloween movies, so I guess we'll be ranking her separately. Since whoever made this decided to put both versions in. That's okay. Is there anyone here that I hate and is like, that is the F tier? Which feels kind of mean in this case. I don't know how we're going to... See, compared to the franchises that we did for both horror and sci-fi, this one feels more personal. Like, I feel bad for putting someone in the F tier for this one, because it's a person. Not a real person, it's a character. But I feel like I'm being mean to the actor or something, even though it's not their fault necessarily. It could be bad writing. Could be a horrible movie. Yeah. Actually, that's probably a good way to look at it, is what movies here do I not like? Because the movies I don't like probably have final girls in them that I don't rank very highly. And we can maybe start from there. So what do I not like? X is great. Nightmare on Elm Street, great. Final Destination, yeah, Claire's not a good character. If that's what her name was, I think it is. She's not that great in those movies. Like, she's in 2, which is the best one, but she's not the, like, she's, if anything, she's like one of the least interesting characters in that movie. There's a lot more fun characters. So so she's probably ranking kinda low. Anything else sticks out as a movie I don't like? I don't like Saw. It's actually kind of weird to say her character from Saw is like a final girl, because I don't know if I'd really count her as one, but she's here. We'll put her somewhere. The question mark here for me is probably Amanda Seyfried here, because I think this is from Jennifer's Body, and I've only seen that once, and it was in 2009. So, and I don't really remember much about the movie or really feeling that strongly towards it in any way, shape, or form. So if there's anyone that I leave off this just because I feel like I can't place her, it'll be that one. Let's see. Ready or Not, I wasn't so hot on, although that's in the minority. I don't think Sam from the new Scream movies is particularly good. I think she's actively quite bad in Scream 5. She's not too bad in Scream 6, but Scream 5, she's pretty rough. Any other movies I don't like? I Know What We Did Last Summer is not very good. Oh, this is tough. This is really tough. I don't have chat to bounce off either. I have to just make decisions. I have to talk through my process and make decisions. Who do I really like? Who I mean, Ripley's got to be high, right? Like Ripley's a great character, and especially when you get to Aliens, and she kind of gets to grow, and she gets to have this mother arc, and she gets to have all these things. She's probably the most badass out of any character here. Well, okay, there's one or two that might challenge her, but in terms of like prestige and badass, she's up there. So I guess yeah, that's established a baseline. I think I feel comfortable putting Ripley in the S tier. It's there's really not much to argue, I don't think. Um it's yeah. I feel good about it. I feel good about it. Don't at me. Okay, so who else do I like? I'll tell you who I really like. I really like Tree from Happy Death Day. I'm not going to go S tier, but I really like that character. That movie lives and dies on enjoying that character and her arc. I think Jessica Rose does a really good job. I'm going A tier with Tree. Tree's getting the A tier. I feel good about that. I do. Should I put someone low, try and establish down the stream? I mean, who is ranking though? Is there anyone here that I feel so strongly about that I'd want to put them in the F tier? Because even Jennifer Love Hewitt's character from I Know What You Did Last Summer, like it's not a good movie, and like her character's kind of just a sad, lonely girl character. She's kind of moody or whatever, but she's still not that bad. Like she's not. I mean, I think part of the problem is that when you get to sort of weaker slasher movies, like I don't begrudge a slasher movie for having just a typical final girl, which ultimately is what she kind of is. She's lacking some of the more like charming qualities that some others do, but doesn't make her F tier. Maybe there is no F tier here. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. Okay. Is there anyone that I would like to put further down here? S tier obviously is the best. A tier is extremely positive. B tier is still positive. And then C's kind of middling. C's where you're getting to middling territory. Is that where I feel Jennifer Love Hewitt and I Know What You Did Last Summer goes? It's kind of, honestly, it's hard to hate anyone more than a C tier here. But maybe just for the sake of having enough of like, do you know what? I think I hate Claire from Final Destination more. Like, Final Destination is a franchise I like way more than I Know What You Did Last Summer. But Claire's character, but all the characters from the first movie, like, or at least the main two or three that have the most sort of screen time, are super annoying, right? Like, Claire and the main guy, I can't remember his name, but they are super annoying with each other, and they talk in this weird kind of like poetic, like far too poetic for teenagers, about how they felt that night and about how she's made a sculpture for him. I think Claire's the one that I hate here the most. Maybe. I don't know if she's F tier though. Maybe E tier. But honestly, maybe just D tier. I don't know if I've got anyone lower than D tier. Let's put her in there. Let's pop her in there. We've got a little bit of a baseline for at least to compare amongst the different characters now. Let's see. All right, I don't like Sam from Scream 5 and 6. I think she belongs in the D tier with her. Let's make that clear. I think some of these are harder to compare than others because, like, when I've got two characters from slasher movies, they feel very comparable. But comparing the character from Midsommar to a slasher movie character is kind of weird because Midsommar inherently, just because it's more of a layered like character study of a horror movie, inherently has got a much stronger character. So not a fun character necessarily, which some of these other characters are, because they're from fun slasher movies, so they tend to be likable, or they tend to be, I don't know, bubbly, have a bit more personality to kind of spice things up, whatever it may be. Not all of them, obviously, but some of them. Um, you know, I'm going to put. I think her name's Anne from the first Friday the 13th. I'm going to plop her in the C tier because I feel like she gets a lot of cred as like one of the first big final girls because she's in the first Friday the 13th. But I don't think her or any of the characters in Friday the 13th one are that remarkable. She's fine. They're all just kind of fine in that movie. No one really sticks out. The sequels have way more interesting characters. But maybe that's what I should do next. Maybe I should do the other Friday the 13th girls. I don't think there's one for every movie here, because there's definitely some from later movies that they could have included, but we do have part 2 here with the pitchfork. Do we have any other Friday the 13th girls? I don't think we do. No, we don't. She's better. She's definitely better. She's not like super layered as a character, admittedly. So I think we'll go B tier. So okay, we've kind of established what our 5 main grades are. I don't know if I'm going to be using E or F. I feel it feels too mean. I don't think any like there is definitely F tier final girl characters. There absolutely is, but I don't think whoever made this put in any that I would rank that low. I'm sure there is. Like if we scourge like the worst horror movies ever, we're going to find them. They definitely exist, but I don't think they're here. So, with that said, this might also be controversial, but I'm going Texas Chainsaw Massacre's character also in the C tier. The characters in in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, rather, if I could speak properly, they're not that great. In fact, most of them are kind of annoying. Like she has like she's not going any lower than this because she does have a bit of prestige being in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, being drenched in blood at the end. She's in some famous sequences, but she also does scream a lot. Like one of the things that I noticed rewatching that movie, which is obviously a very good movie, but she does not shut up. But just the constant screaming for like a good 25 minutes in the back chunk when she's being chased. It goes on for a long time, and it starts to really ring your ears after a while. So because of that, I don't think I'm going above C tier. I don't. I think one of the things that I'm realizing as I'm talking about these and I'm looking at them is that 2 of the earlier, more famous ones I've got in the C tier, and I've got obviously Ripley's also just as old because 78 was the first Alien, but I feel like some of these early slasher movie characters are not quite as good as maybe some newer characters because they got away with being thinner in the early days or whatever. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll take that back as I do more of these. All right, Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street. Let's put her in. She's great. She is way more likable and memorable than the first Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw. Like she is a protagonist. She's not just the girl who runs from the killer. She's proactive. She tries to figure out who Freddy is. She tries to avoid falling asleep. When she is put in the corner, she tries to figure out how to beat Freddy. What can she do? Is there rules to the dreams? Can she do something in the real world? She is way more of a character, and she drives the plot way more than, the characters in Friday the 13th typically are just doing camp stuff or hanging out with the other counselors until they notice there's been some murders in the last like 25 minutes. That tends to be what's happening. But in Nightmare on Elm Street, and this is just the story of the movie, but it's got more of an actual driving plot with a character who has to interact with it, who has to think about it and think things up. So I think Nancy is at least A tier. She is. And I think Heather Langenkamp plays her very likable. You're kind of along with the ride with her, and you're frustrated when no one else listens to her, as opposed to finding her annoying when she keeps going on about the thing that's dangerous and no one's believing her. You're with her. You're kind of like siding with her. And that's partly down to performance, it's partly down to how she's written, how everything she's saying makes sense to us, the audience, and we're sympathetic to it. All these things. So at least A tier. Maybe she might be S tier. She might be. Do you know what? I think I'll say S tier. I think I'll say S tier. I'm feeling she's got that mixture of being just, you know, likable, fun, a good strong character on her own. She's got the proactive side. She's also got the prestige of being in a famous original horror movie that's great. And then if you include part 3, of course, as well, she's good in that too. But you also, you know, you've got all that, but you have just the general likabilities and stuff as well. So, you know, so you add on the prestige of being in a classic on top of all that other stuff, and yeah, you're kind of up in the S tier. You've got everything firing in all cylinders. So good. And then Laurie from the original Halloween, I think by my logic, like, I obviously prestigious film, important horror film, right? So she's important in that sense. I think she's a strong character from a writing. I don't mean strong as in she's, you know, she's strong and fights against the odds. I don't mean that. Oh, she has that too, but she's strong from a writing perspective in that there's, you know, there's some layers to Halloween. When you stop and analyze it, and why is she the final girl, and why have the rules of the final girl existed? It's because of Laurie Strode. It's because she is, you know, she's the good character. She's the one who thinks about the children before herself, which makes you sympathize with her and root for her because she's a hero, right? She effectively is a hero. When all the other teenagers are too distracted by sex and all the other stuff, she's thinking of the innocent people that she should be protecting. She's a protector. And that makes you root for her. So I think, you know, all those things mean that she has to be at least A tier. And I'm thinking that she probably is A tier and is just slightly a you know, a little knock under, you know, Ripley and Nancy, because I think fundamentally her personality isn't quite as engaging as the others, as those two specifically. You know, Nancy's got very fiery. Ripley's got great, you know, like especially in Aliens, she has great kind of wit and sarcasm to her. You know, nuke the site from orbit, they can bill me, all that stuff. Like, you know, she's got a lot of bite to her, and she becomes more confident. So I think by my logic, I think Laurie goes sort of top A tier. Okay. See, it's starting to get a little easier because I'm starting to like sort of like, okay, this is what an A tier means. This is what a B tier means. So on, so on. Obviously, it's a combination of different things, but we're starting to suss it out a little bit. Okay. Okay. Let's stick with Halloween. Let's do Daniel Harris down here. Oh, that's our actor. I can't remember the character's name off the top of my head. No, Jamie. It's Jamie, because Jamie's an orphan. Jamie's an orphan. I think it's weird. Like, I'm not against having her here, but I do think it's weird to have her and not her big sister from Halloween 4, because she's actually the real sort of like final girl character who we're following as the protagonist. Whereas Jamie's more kind of just like the plots revolving around her. Kind of, she's the MacGuffin, effectively, that Michael's after. So, obviously not as good as Laurie. I think that's fair to say. I think she's likable enough in 4 though. She's got that kind of innocent kid, and unlike young Michael in the start of the first movie, obviously she's a real character. She has fears. She has all these things, you know, in the ending of the film, which I won't spoil, but the ending does something interesting with her as a character. So, but she is just kind of the a MacGuffin in that she's this plot object that needs to be protected by the other characters. She's something for the other characters to worry about, and she's the target for the villain, as opposed to being just a fleshed out character where, you know, it's the other characters who get to shine by being more proactive and things like that. But she has some memorable moments, and she has, you know, likable enough things, and I do like where the plot goes with her character. So I think I'm probably going to go upper C tier with Jamie. I'm tempted to, you know, she's bordering on B tier, and I think just all those reasons that I just said, where she's less of a character, more of just a like a plot like device for everything else to revolve around her, is why I'm leaning towards C tier rather than B tier. Because I think she's likable enough, and like I say, I like where it goes with her. But for all those other reasons, I think she probably doesn't get any higher than the C tier. Okay, I've sussed that out. Maybe I should do a modern character for fun. Let's do. I think her name's Erin. I can't remember her name, but You're Next is a great little movie. It was such a pleasant surprise, and she is very memorable as a final girl because she's the final girl that it turns out is very good at killing the bad guys and fighting back and setting traps. It's kind of a wild going into Your Next knowing nothing about it made for such a fun, exciting experience. And I was so into it. I was not expecting the scenes we got. I was not expecting the villains we got, and I was not expecting the final girl. So I would place her certainly high amongst modern final girls. And I think I'm thinking either A tier or B tier. And the only reason why I'm thinking maybe not quite A tier is because I think from like a badass perspective, right, she's great, right? And she's fun to root for. But I would be hard pressed to sort of like give you like much of a personality from memory. Like, you know, I think she's kind of just normal, a bit quiet, and then she turns out to be a badass, which works for her, which absolutely works for her, and it works in the movie. But I'm just thinking because like I'm thinking of if I'm compared to Tree, who's the other modern character that I've got on here. Tree is like full of personality, right, and has this big character arc. I don't think in Your Next that she has as much of an arc per se, but she is definitely she's more proactive and capable of Tree, at least to begin with. Anyway, Tree has to sort of get smarter and do things as the movie goes on. So I think because I don't remember as much of a personality, I'm going to say upper B tier. But she is great. You know, as far as like the action of the movie goes, she's fantastic. Like very memorable. Some of the best you'll see. But of course, we have, you know, we have lots of plates spinning to decide all these things. We have like character kind of story. We have personality. We have their sort of function in the movie. You know, there's a lot of different things to judge here, and not any of these is going to have all of them probably, but it's like which ones do they have, and so on, so on. So very interesting. What do we do? Sydney, maybe we do Sydney. Scream. How do I feel about Sydney? She's fine. I don't dislike anything about Sydney, but I wouldn't say there's anything that I particularly enthusiastic about either. I'm just going quiet because I actually don't know. I just don't feel that strongly. I think obviously Neve Campbell does a decent job in the role. I think she obviously serves her purpose in the plot. We do get a lot of her, and there's a lot of like, you know, backstory to her and like why the killer's targeting her and all that stuff. But she is surrounded by more kind of fun characters, I would say. She kind of comes out feeling like the straight man in the middle of everything in a lot of ways. So I think based on that, I might just go with a very fine C tier. Yeah, I put it at the front of the C tier, but I don't think Scream hinges on like really being into Sydney. Like she is perfectly fine. She does not detract from the movie in any way, but you know, would the movie suffer if you swapped her out with another capable actress of the time period? Probably not. It'd probably feel the exact same, more or less. Um, so you know, and sometimes the performance as well is obviously something I'm judging, and the performance is fine here. Like it's good even, but it's like I don't know if Sydney has anything particularly like special versus the final girls that I really like. She's not bad. So I see seems fitting. He seems very fitting. I suppose we'll stick with Scream, and then we have Gail Weathers, who's not technically a final girl, but I mean, I guess this is mostly final girls, but some of them are just girls in a horror movie. um, Gail's way more memorable than Sydney is. Gail's more fun. She's got some more laughs to go along with her. She's this kind of hard hitting, doesn't give a shit. She's kind of ruthless and like inhumane to begin with, but lightens up a little bit because she goes through shit, and then that's an arc that plays out a bit over the films. It does sadly get reset a few times because they just have to have her be like a soulless journalist again in like the sixth movie, even though she kind of learned that lesson already. That happens in a couple of the sequels where it feels like it resets her a bit, but I do think she's more memorable than Sydney is. I don't know if I'd necessarily put her like way up high, but I do think Courtney Cox plays the character very fun. So, and her and Dewey, I think, again, this is a case where I think her and Dewey are both more interesting than Sydney is and more entertaining than Sydney is. I'll put her sort of in the middle of the B tier, I think. That's where I'm feeling with her. All right. There we go with the main lady from Terrifier 2. Terrifier 2 was a movie that I gushed about last year. I loved Terrifier 2. I thought it was great. That's one of the best horror movies I've seen in quite some time. I love its visceral slasher nature, but also its sort of meta commentary on the slasher genre. And that's important for me to bring up because the final girl fits into that and what they do with her to kind of play on the tropes of the final girl. So from an overall script perspective, she's a very interesting character in that sense. And on top of that, I do think the actress is very likable. I think she plays the scenes where she's sort of interacting with Art, the clown, the villain of the movie, or being a big sister. I think she has screen presence. She has charisma. I guess where I'm, and she feels like I say, the idea of the final girl in the movie feels very important to the overall thing that the movie's doing. And she feels, because the first Terrifier, it had a final girl, but it didn't, like, ultimately, I don't want to spoil anything, so I can't say what I was going to say, but let's just say it feels like Art is met a match of some kind. And she doesn't know that she's the match, like she's something that can maybe fight this enemy, this evil to begin with. But the movie does some very interesting things. Yeah, and obviously she didn't design it. Her father designed it, but she makes this her own costume for Halloween. She's got kind of like a warrior princess vibe going on, which feels like thematically kind of awesome to go up against the serial killer clown. All good stuff. So, and she's very memorable. I've seen the movie a couple times, and she leaves an impact, I think. So I would at least upper B. Yeah, I think I'd probably go upper B here. It's the sort of thing where, like, depending on what they do in Terrifier 3 when it inevitably happens, like she could bump up, like she could. But really interesting start to her. Obviously, some of these characters do have multiple movies they get to be judged on, whereas some of them only have the one. But yeah. Okay. Samara Weaving's character from Ready or Not. I did not like that movie that much. I thought it was just okay. Obviously they're going for this badass thing where it's this deadly game of hide and seek, and she like grabs weapons and fights back. I think one of the big problems with the movie is that the tone of it felt a little bit weird to me. I didn't feel like it pinned down if it wanted to be more in the fun or more in the danger or or whatever. It didn't gel together for me. But I think one of the things I remember thinking while I watched it is that, like, what they were doing with her character, I kind of felt like I already got a better version of this with You're Next. I've already talked about You're Next and what I got from that main character. I think Samara Weaving's character in Ready or Not is a weaker version And there's a couple of fun moments. Don't get me wrong, but it felt like it was trying really hard to sort of make a new badass kind of icon, and I never really felt it. And it's not because Samara Weaving's wrong for that role. Like I think she's fine. She's a solid actress. Um, I think the concept was solid enough. There was just a bit of a tongue-in-cheekness to it all that just didn't quite click with me. Even though I'm down with fun horror movies, I just didn't like it that much. So I'm left in kind of a weird place with her character where I don't feel attached to her at all because I just didn't like the movie that much. So I think because of that, I mean, I appreciate that she becomes a bit of a badass, but I guess I also wanted more out of that. If I remember correctly, I think when I saw it finally, I thought that we didn't see enough of the transition into being a badass. It kind of felt like it just kind of like shifted to it rather than actually gave us like learning of skills or moments where she's like, oh, I realize I can be a badass now, kind of thing. I don't know, like it was missing something. It was missing some steps along the way. So I honestly, I think I'm going D tier. I just don't feel anything. I just don't feel anything for her character because I just didn't like the movie that much. I expect that'll be one of the more controversial things I've done so far because people did like it. Let's do old Laurie, because I did not like the new Halloween movies all that much. I think they were trying to do too many things, and that made Halloween 2018 suffer for me. The pacing was too quick. But with her character particularly, like I'm fine with her being this obsessed character. Like I think the ideas for her like older self were interesting. I do think all of her stuff in the sequels and Kills and Ends, I don't like at all. I think Kills especially, everything in the hospital was just straight up trash. And I kind of like, if anything, Kills is the one that I can enjoy almost in a so bad it's good kind of way because it's so absurd at points. But like that's all I've got. And while I do like a lot of things in It Ends, none of it's related to her character. So definitely much weaker than the original Halloween version of Laurie. There's no denying that. Yeah, it is still Laurie. Like I think just on the basis that I like some of the ideas of her obsession and stuff, I'll knock her out of the C tier. But that's about as high as I'm willing to go with old Laurie. What else we got here? What about I can't remember her name, but from Hellraiser. This is the lady from Hellraiser here at the end of the oh, you can't see her there. There you go. So she's from Hellraiser. And she's in the first two. Kirsty's her name. It just came to me. But she is very likable. She reminds me of Nancy in some ways. I don't know if it's because she's got the dark curly hair. Maybe that might be the only reason why it makes me think of her. But she's likable enough. I think what's interesting about Hellraiser compared to some of these other slasher movies is that it doesn't really follow her that much. She's kind of just a recurring guest character because the plot revolves around the villains, really. And then she's kind of the main victim that they're targeting late on in the movie. And she is definitely the final girl. She becomes the final girl of the movie. And then she is very much the main character in the second one, which is not as good, but is still worth watching. But she is likable. I think she's not really why Hellraiser's good, but I do like her in the role. I guess it's kind of in this place where I think her presence, the actress's presence, seems like they cast her well in that she's very easy to kind of just sort of like, and she feels like she belongs in that role. And when I say she reminds me of Nancy, it feels like, if she was giving more to do, maybe she could be at the level of a Nancy, but she isn't. Fundamentally, the film follows the villains, and it's this darker movie because it's following the horrible atrocities that they're doing, and she then comes into the plot and becomes more relevant as it goes on. So I think because of that, like she only gets so high. Well, she's probably a low B tier, I think. Because fundamentally, she's just not as important to the movie. She still has to be there, don't get me wrong, but she's not as. Yeah, I think. I don't know. Maybe, you know what? I think I'm going to bump some things down here. I'm going to bump some things down here because I'm noticing that um I'm going to sort of shuffle things a little bit. Okay, so I've split what was in the C tier and the B tier a little bit, and bumped the D tier down to E to sort of just spread these out a little bit and give more of a layered approach to this. Because as I was adding more, I start to sort of sometimes see where a few names don't really fit with the other ones in the same tier. They just kind of have to go there because they're above the other ones, and that to me said, oh, there should be a tier in between where they can go, and I think that's where the C tier now is, between who was in the B and now who's in the D. So, okay, right. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So, yeah, I definitely like all the names in the B tier more than the C tier, and the C tier more than the D tier, right? I think yes. If I could put Jennifer Aniston from Leprechaun in the F tier, I would, just for the lols, but she's not here. So, where do we go next? Jennifer Love Hewitt from I Know What You Did Last Summer. Is it just the E tier? Probably. She's probably a little bit more likable than those two, at least. But yeah, I don't think she's good enough to get up to the D tier. Okay, so we only get the one row there now. So now you can see everything at the same time. So, where do we go from here? I think. Well, we've got another Scream character here, actually. We've got Tara Carpenter. I only remember these names because I just saw Scream 6, like, a month and a half ago. But also just because the Carpenters are easy to remember because it's obviously a reference to John Carpenter. I like her more than her big sister, certainly. She has more of a person. I think the actress is better. I think that's the main thing, is that Scream 5, I thought the other actress who played the big sister, I thought she just wasn't very good. She has some, and it's not necessarily all her fault, but some of the scenes she had were very melodramatic, and I felt a real kind of force there. I think, what's her face? Oh, I'm forgetting her name. Jenny Ortega? Does that sound right? I think obviously she's becoming more of a star. I think they realized that and try to give her more to do in Scream 6 as a result, because oh shit, she's the one who's actually getting these big other movie roles and TV show roles and all these things. She's definitely, I think, at least a tier above her big sister. But honestly, she is quite likable, so I would probably even go as far to say upper C tier? Probably below Friday the 13th Part 2. But yeah, I guess I'd put her above Sydney. I've never thought about it before. Do I like Tara from Scream 5 and 6 more than Sydney? But I probably do. Although still probably not my favourite character of her movies. Much like Sydney's not my favourite character from Scream 1, 2, 3, or 4. Or 5. Of any of them. That said, though, I didn't like anyone in Scream 3. They all came off horribly. So, okay, there we go. We got that one. There we go. Good stuff. So what do we have here? We have we got the sister from Nope, played by Kiki Palmer, I believe is her name. That's the actress's name. I don't remember her character's name. But I really like Nope, and she is one of the 3 lead characters, and they're all very memorable, including herself. She has a very sort of fiery go get kind of attitude, I would say. Um, and she actually does get she gets a lot of big moments. Like I think when you go to see that movie, I think you expect it to follow her brother a bit more, and I think at times it does feel like slightly more his movie, but it also she ends up getting some of her lion's share of the big moments as well as it goes on. Um, and Kiki Palmer's very good. Oh, this is tough. I don't do. I'm just trying to think. Do I like her character specifically enough for B tier? Because that's kind of where I'm thinking. I'm thinking either B tier or C tier. Definitely a very solid character. Uh, and she has layers of character because her relationship with her brother plays into like their motivations and their connections and looking out for each other. It leads to some big, nice, dramatic moments later on. Um, hmm. Yeah, I don't. I don't know if she sticks out from the rest of the movie enough to go into the B tier. I think that's maybe where I'm landing, but I think I'm going to put her right at the top of the C tier. Yeah, I think that's where I'm feeling because I think like her brother and like the techie guy, none of whose names I can remember, but they all feel kind of equally important. There's kind of like a trinity to the movie, and I suppose that's somewhat true of Scream as well to an extent. But I wouldn't describe the trinity of Scream to be a trinity in the original. They kind of became the trinity because of the three original characters who kept surviving for a lot of the franchise. They kept coming back, so they became this trio. But and no, that's just what they already are, a trio. Not from the start, because the third guy's like kind of new, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I'll go there. Um, then we have where do I go next? Let's go at the start of that row. Then let's go to X with was her name Maxine in that, or I think I'm assuming that because the next movie is going to be called Maxine. Oh, I say she was, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Mia Goth's character in X. What's funny is again, you could have easily, I mean, maybe not Final Girl per se, but you could have easily thrown Ortega's character in there as well. But she obviously is the star of the movie. I mean, the actress actually plays more than one role, weirdly enough. But um, she's a very solid Final Girl. She's got kind of a I don't know, they do this kind of hypnotic thing with her where there's a lot of times where she'll just sort of like stare into space or she'll be in the heat of the moment and it'll kind of focus on like her gaze and things like that. It really tries to sort of like almost trance you with her stare a lot during the movie. And she has some big moments that, play out towards the end where she's fighting back and she's getting into some big set piece moments. Yeah, obviously very solid. I'm thinking probably the lower B tier. I just like she's very good, obviously, right? And people came out of the movie praising her, right, and saying, lol, she has the X factor, all that stuff. But I don't quite think I liked her as much as the characters in Terrifier 2 or You're Next. I think she's kind of just a little under them as a character on her own. I think it'd be very different if you brought in Pearl from Pearl, but it's kind of weird to say that's a final girl because she's just kind of the protagonist of like a character study of a horror movie as opposed to like a if you've seen it you'll know why it's a weird comparison, but yeah. Next we have, I want to say, well, the actress is Fiona Dourif, I think, but this is from the later Chucky movies. This is from Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, and yeah, I suppose the TV show a little bit, but she's solid. I think she's She carries the two movies well enough. Um, the actress herself does a great job when she needs to impersonate someone else's performance. She actually nails it. um, but she's, I wouldn't say she's like a super memorable personality though. So I think I'm leaning towards kind of the somewhere in the C tier, maybe the lower end of the C tier. Yeah, maybe just above, below Sydney, above Sydney, something in there. Yeah. So the C tier, and it makes sense that the good but not like standout tier is the one that's the most filled. There's a lot of just solid but not exceptional examples. There should be in the middle of anything, really. Um, it's a shame when it's weighed too much to the bottom, because you've got a lot of crap. Okay. Chick from Saw. I'm not a big Saw guy, and that she barely counts as a final girl, to be honest. It's kind of a weird comparison to me. So, I'm, I'm almost tempted to just shove her in the F tier. So, one, because there's someone in there, but two, because I don't even think she really counts in the same way that the rest of the characters do. She's kind of like a side character who recurs a little bit. I don't think she really counts. Uh, yeah, no, I'll just leave it at that. Leave her there. Um, Next up, I'll go. Well, we did one of the Chucky characters. We've got a couple of other Chucky ladies here. So we got the mum from the first movie. I think she is like she works in the movie. Like she's in, right, and this is a Chucky Child's Play 1's this Chucky movie before we kind of knew who Chucky was, so it's a slow build to revealing that he's really alive and that he's doing stuff, and she's very much the mother of the kid, and it's a very interesting sort of quote unquote final girl because it's a mother looking after her son. It's a little bit different to a lot of the other examples. It's this more middle-aged woman who's got responsibilities, and it's the fear of looking after her kid. So there's definitely an interesting dynamic to her like that, and the actress I think does a fine job with it. But ultimately, I don't think she ever rises into kind of like really memorable standout character tiers. So I think again, this is probably another one that's sort of slotting into the C tier somewhere, probably lower end. I'm tempted, yeah. I'm even tempted just to bump her at the D tier, just because like I don't know how memorable of a character she is. Like I know she's from Chucky, and I know she's fine in it, which is why I'm not. Yeah, I'll keep her in the C tier because there's nothing wrong with her. Mia from Evil Dead 2013. So I really like Jane Levi, and I really like Mia in that movie. I think obviously she has a slightly different journey as a final girl because she spends a lot of the movie as a deadite. So you get the introduction to her, you have a lot of her being kind of the villain almost, and then you have her getting to sort of be the hero and the final girl and all that stuff towards the end of the movie. And those scenes are awesome. Like that final half hour of Evil Dead 2013 is some of my favorite stuff in a horror movie in a long time, and she gets to do a lot of cool stuff in it. And I think her character and what the character is going through has the themes that adds a little bit of a metaphor to the movie and what's going on and all the rest of it. I think it is a weird comparison with some of these other ones though because of everything. But then if you're going to include her time as a deadite and her performance as a deadite, that stuff's also pretty riveting. So look, she's definitely at least in the C tier, but honestly, I'm inching towards B tier. I think B tier, and she's in some ways higher than that, but it feels weird to put her any higher because I don't know if you necessarily get to know her the same way you do other final girl characters. But when the times come, when the big moments come, she is awesome in them. and the movie's awesome. So it leaves a very strong memory in my mind. So I think I'm happy with her sort of in the B tier. Yeah. Okay, the witch. Yeah, this is I think the witch and Midsummer are really weird ones to compare to the rest of them because they're very very different characters, and the films are very very different. To just there's a killer or there's a monster. Like there's a lot more going on with those characters. They represent a lot more, but it feels weird to just let them go to the top because of that. Because they're just very different types of movies and very different styles of writing. Hell, Shelley Duvall from The Shining kind of feels like that as well to an extent. Um, like I would. The thing with Shelley Duvall is that I actually think she's like this is going to sound like harsh, but in some ways she's maybe the least interesting part of The Shining. And that she plays a role as the concerned mother and all that. That's an important character to have there. Don't get me wrong. And the one who's going to protect the son when the time comes, and all this other stuff. But the kid's got the supernatural stuff going on. That's fascinating. Jack has that, but he's also kind of losing his mind. So that's all fascinating. And the cinematography and the editing are like the real stars of the show. Quite frankly, I think her character is important from a plot perspective. I don't know how much I love her as a character on her own. As far as like why I enjoy that movie. I I definitely don't think she's going any higher than the C tier. I'll say that. I'd probably put her at the top of the C tier though, because she is still very important to the movie. But fundamentally, she's just not as fun. She's just not as fun as any of the ones that come above her, or feel as I don't know, memorable or no, not memorable. That's not quite the right word because she is memorable, but I don't know. I just don't feel the spark. I just don't feel the spark. I guess that's the best way I can put it. We have one more Chucky character actually. We got the big sister from Chucky, or sorry, from Child's Play 2, I should say. Kind of an interesting one because she's not the lead of that movie, but she's a close second to Andy, to the kid. She ends up being this unlikely ally, and she's memorable for being kind of this punk teenager who's got a bit of a sort of rebellious streak in her. I don't necessarily think she ranks super high though. I think she's solid enough in the movie, but I think I like the parents more than her in the movie, to be honest. Because the parents, if I remember, are I think they're Dee Wallace and Garrett Graham, who are really strong character actors and are very memorable and likable. So I think probably still C tier. She probably just outdoes the mum from the first one, I would say. So yeah, let's go there. The main character from Us. Oh, I don't know. Her performance is great. Like the way she acts terrified. Like I remember the moments of suspense where they're kind of like staring at their doppelgangers, and obviously the performance as the doppelganger is also very good. But we're kind of just ranking her as a character. Obviously she's pivotal to the whole movie. Everything kind of revolves around her and her backstory. Obviously she has to do a lot of fighting during the movie. Probably C tier. Like if I'm comparing her to the other Jordan Peele movie character that I've got here, from Nope. I think I like the character from Nope more. I think she's a lot more just engaging as a character. And I mean that's kind of by design. Like, you know, she's supposed to be that type of character, whereas the character in us is supposed to be kind of detached and kind of like something's not quite right. But it makes it a little harder to kind of just get attached to her because she's intentionally kind of feels like she's at a distance a little bit. Um, so she's probably still C tier though. You know, she's just too well performed, really, to go any lower. Um, that's probably below Fiona Dourif, I'd say. Above Sydney? Yeah, above Sydney. I think that's fair. Right. What do we have here? The main girl from Suspiria? You know, Suspiria is a very pretty movie, and I like all the lighting, but I'm not actually that fond of it as far as, like, a movie as a whole goes, because I think the plot's just kind of whatever. Like, I don't really care about what's going on. And I don't remember the girl being all that interesting, other than just looking kind of scared a lot. Much like this image of her here. I just remember that look on her face a lot. So honestly, she's no higher than D tier. I have to be honest. She's kind of gets a little bit of prestige because she's in a sort of a relatively light movie, even though it's not one that I'm that attached to. There's it's not that I don't like Argento. There's plenty of other Argento movies I like way more than Suspiria. I'll go low D tier on her. Yeah. Okay. Right. Midsummer and the Witch. Or the Vivitch. Where do I stand on these two? I don't know. Like I say, these feel so difficult to compare to the rest of them. Because if we're going strictly as final girls, I don't really think either of them count as final girls. They are the main characters of their movies, but I wouldn't say their movies have final girls. They have protagonists. So it feels weird to even slot them in. If I might even just not do it. I just don't think they fit. I don't like. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple of the ones that I have put in that feel like they're a little like tangential to final girls. Like, you know, Gail Weathers in Scream is not the final girl, but it is still a slasher movie. It is still a movie where people have been killed off, and she's one who survives. So it still sort of fits more or less with the idea. Not a lot of people die in The Shining, but you know, still, it's kind of like it still is close enough that I can kind of think about it in those terms. I don't think the characters from Midsummer and The Witch really feel like they belong on a list with the rest of these characters. Not because they're not great; they are great, and they're well performed. And out of the two, I'd have to give it I'd probably say out of the two, I would give a bit more praise to Midsummer, but like I don't know, I just don't think they fit as final girls with the rest of these. So I think I'm done. I think that's my tier list. Is that the shape I was expecting? I don't know. I feel like I do tend to go a little middle heavy sometimes with these tiers but I think that makes sense. Like I was saying earlier, like it makes sense that the average or the good but not great and not bad, the middle in many ways should be the one that's the most full. And then the ones that are better go above and the ones that are worse go below, which obviously is the whole point of this, but it makes sense to me that the middle is the most packed of it. But yeah, I think my S tier makes sense to me. I think Ripley's one of the most famous, most badass final girls there is. I think Nancy is the one that people remember. She's the one that gets referenced more, I would say, out of the classic final girls. I think Laurie's not quite up there, but she's still very strong and is also very important. I think Tree's my favorite of the modern horror girls. I think it's interesting that my B tier is almost all recent additions. Like Gale's the only one that's not from the last decade. And I find that very interesting. And I do wonder if that's because modern horror movies are trying to give their characters more than what the older ones did. In general, like I think the horror movies that I like these days have a bit more going on for the characters. So they're not just the girl who runs away and survives. There's a bit more meat to them than that. And there's a good number of them in that C tier as well. So I think there's a conscious effort to have them be a bit more fleshed out and have them go on more of a journey and feel like they are more well-rounded characters than perhaps some older films did. And I think that's why, even though Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw are famous horror movies from the past, and Suspiria, I just don't think any of those characters are that, deeper, well-rounded. It's just they're kind of just the victims who will maybe survive. Like that's really all they are in some of those cases. And sometimes they rise above that because they're a bit more likable. Like Amy in Friday the 13th too. I like her more than Annie from the first film because she's just got a nicer personality. She's just a bit more likable. But, she doesn't really have much more. She has a couple of more badass things towards the end as well, I suppose. But, yeah, I think some of those more recent examples are just a sign that they're trying more these days than they used to flesh those characters out a bit more. Which is not to say that it never happened in the past. In fact, that's why you've got two older characters in the S tier. Those are kind of the special ones because they have the prestige and the history, but they also have the depth to them, and therefore they are the top of the pyramid, if you will. So there we go. That is my Final Girls tier list. There's definitely more that could have been on here. I found one and chose to use it. I didn't make this one this time. I'm sure in the future I'll make some of my own. I'll find more to do on Tier Maker. But hopefully my thought process and trying to argue why some are better than others made some sense. But that is me. So thank you very much for joining me. Hopefully you had some fun. You can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. But that is me, so thank you once again for watching. I always appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Goodbye, guys.